Well, hello and welcome to another day on Cornwall Pocket Farm, where I try and figure out how to live sustainably on 300 square metres in the city. Today is a video that is the beginning of a new series. I did talk some time ago about sort of sharing my tips and tricks as to sort of how I do my sewing and how I've sort of organised myself to create clothing items that I feel really suit me and that I really like and that all work together. So yeah, I think it's going to be a series of maybe 4 or 5 videos. So some of the key things that I found were really important was figuring out my own body proportions, my the bits that I wasn't that happy with, the bits that I liked the most, how they differed from standard patterns, if you like. Also, like my colour, how I figured out what colours I like and how I sort of created a cohesive wardrobe so that all of those bits and pieces go together, and how I do that in an ongoing process, how I bring new fabrics in or new pieces from the charity shop or whatever that I know are all going to work together in my wardrobe. And the reason I'm doing the tips and tricks videos first before my winter capsule wardrobe is when I started to do the boards, the mood boards and everything for my winter capsule wardrobe, I realised that there was a whole load of background information on the style side of things and the proportion side of things that I sort of needed to share first. So that's why I'm doing these first and then moving on to the winter capsule. I am working on my winter capsule, so the ideas and thoughts behind it, but I sort of needed to put this framework in place, if that makes sense. Sounds very formal, doesn't it? But I just thought I'd share the sort of the framework that I use to make decisions and how I get to where I'm getting, and then the making of that capsule wardrobe. So I hope that all makes sense. And yeah, please bear in mind that this is just me telling my story and the things that I have found. Obviously, everybody else out there will have to apply it to themselves, if that makes sense. I am being really challenged with lighting issues today. As you know, I did a bit of a video on setting up my YouTube studio, which is a very grand term, for the corner of my sewing room, really. But I don't have lots of fancy equipment, and so what happens is I rely on daylight. So if it's going dark and light, we've got lots of sun, we've got lots of rain, really high winds and a whole bunch of stuff. So I will do what I can in the post, sort of the editing piece. But yeah, bear in mind, if it goes a bit dodge, I'm sorry. Okay, so where did it all start? Well, I was looking in my wardrobe one day getting ready for work, and I was just so uninspired. I looked into my wardrobe and I realised that I had 7 black skirts. Now bear in mind, I have a small wardrobe. I've always had a small wardrobe. I don't have acres and acres of racks of clothing like some of the YouTubers I see that they've just got these enormous wardrobes. I don't have that. I've always had a very small wardrobe. So 7 black skirts was pretty much every skirt I owned, and they were all black. And I was just really underwhelmed with it all. And I started to wonder why that was. And I realised that there were some things in my wardrobe which I really enjoyed and I wore again and again and again and again. And other things I wore, well, under sufferance just because they were there and they sort of did a job. And of course there were some things in my wardrobe that I didn't wear at all. And nothing really excited me. And I was wondering why, and I decided that I really needed to sort of do a bit of an analysis on that, figure out why. One of the conclusions I came to was that the reason I had 7 black skirts in my wardrobe was that New Zealand is a very small market. I've mentioned this before. There aren't many people. There are way more sheep and cows than there are people. So we don't have there's just not a big choice, because of course for the people creating clothes for the New Zealand market, it's much easier just to make things black because everybody buys black. It's a basic, and it doesn't, you know, it matches with everything arguably. I mean, you know, it's just a basic colour. So when you go shopping, there is a lot of stuff that's in black. And then generally what we'll have is sort of every season there's 1 or 2 colours that sort of come out as that season's accent colour. So, you know, the powers that be out there, I understand it's Pantone colours of the season. the powers that be out there decide what the Pantone colours of the season are, and then that is the colour that turns up in our shops in clothing. So if this season's colour is lime green and peach, so be it. All you can buy in New Zealand shops that year is black and lime green and peach. And if you don't really like lime green and peach, well, you just have black, really. So, you know, or you buy the least offensive of those two colours. You then end up with a wardrobe that is full of black items and some other colours that you probably wouldn't buy, but you needed a blouse and that was lime green or peach. So I realised that the problem partly was to do with our market and lack of choice. That was mainly the colour issue in my wardrobe. It is now pouring with rain on my washing. Shall I rescue it? Yes. Bear with, I'm just going to get my washing in. Okay, I'm back. Washing safely retrieved off the line, and of course the sun's coming out now, so anyway. Where were we? I think we were talking about the 7 black skirts, weren't we? So, and I looked at those skirts and I realised that they were all pretty much the same style. Well, there were 2 different styles. One of the styles was a dropped waist skirt, and the other style was a sort of a waisted but pleated or gathered skirt. And I was interested why they were one of those 2 designs, and when I deeply thought about it, I realised that yet again it was to do with the high street shops and the fact that my shape is not the standard shape that's in the shop. So of course all the clothes that are manufactured to go into the shop, they follow like a standard size 12 and a standard size 10, a standard size 18, whatever it happens to be, but there's a standard size that all of them are made to fit. I'm not that standard shape, and so then what was happening was that I was buying the only sorts of clothes that I could buy from the shops that vaguely fitted me. With my body, what I have is my waist is quite small, but my hips are much larger. So essentially I sort of band several clothes sizes between those 2 measurements. And what I found was I was buying dropped waisted skirts because the skirts then would sit lower on my hips and wouldn't have to contend with the size of my waist. So whether it suited me or not, those skirts fitted me. The other type of skirt that I would buy would be something that did fit my waist but then flared. So it was pleated or it was flared, so that the sizing underneath the lower part of the skirt was sort of irrelevant. So those were the 2 styles that I could buy, and the colour obviously black. And of course having a larger lower half meant that I wasn't going to put peach or lime green on that lower half because that was not a good look. I could see that in the mirror, so generally black was the only other option. So that's how I ended up with 7 black skirts of those 2 designs, those 2 variations. So that explained the skirts. The other thing that I had in my wardrobe were dresses that were either very loose fitting and sort of oversized and boxy, or they were stretchy. Because of course stretchy clothing, you can fit it on any amount of bodies. Not terribly flattering though. I didn't really like wearing the stretchy clothing too much because there was just a little bit too much information on the lower half. It was just a bit overstretched on the lower half if the top was going to fit me. And I didn't feel particularly great in either of those 2 options, so I didn't wear them very often. With my tops, again, I could just about buy tops in the shops, but the smallest size is often oversized on me. It's it can be quite loose. And again, they ended up in random colours, whatever the colour of the season happened to be. The other thing I found is that these standard Pantone colours that they release every year, the following year the colours come out, those colours don't go with the colours from the year before. So, of course, fashion says that what you need to do is throw away your entire wardrobe every year and buy a complete new set of clothes to be fashionable. So of course, not ideal, far, far from ideal. It's causing a big problem and a large amount of waste. So that's not what I want to do. I've never operated like that, and I had no intention of. Like many people, I used to shop recreationally. I used to, on a Saturday, go shopping, wander around the shops, trying a few things, and I used to sort of magpie shop, you know. I would see something that I quite liked, it was nice in the changing room, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll buy this, and you get it home, and then maybe you're not as keen on it, and it doesn't go with anything that you have in your wardrobe already, and then it just sits there, and then it looks at you, and it gives you guilt, and you think, oh, should I get rid of it? Do I keep it? And it just sits in the back of your wardrobe. And what happens is, of course, that lots of magpie shopping eventually builds a wardrobe that you now have, and you look in and you're like, I haven't got anything to wear, and that doesn't go with that, and I'm really bored and nothing inspires me. You might have, like I did, a couple of things in that wardrobe that you really like and you wear again and again and again and again, and unfortunately eventually it dies. The key thing I've found is to work out why you really like that piece, why you wore it so much, what about it really worked for you. Was it the colour? Was it the shape? Was it the way it made you feel? What was it about that item, or what is it about that item that you really like? And that's the key thing, just putting that little bit of time into evaluating and analysing what it is that you like about the pieces that you wear all the time, and the pieces that you don't wear all the time, or you very rarely wear, what about those pieces don't you like? What doesn't work for you in those pieces? I did it, one particular item I remember, I had a dress that I didn't really wear that much, and I decided it was because I didn't have anything to wear over the top of it. So I went out shopping and I bought a jacket that would match the dress, and then I didn't wear either of them. So clearly something was wrong. Well, when I look back, the reason that I didn't wear the dress was because the style wasn't me, and the print wasn't me, and the colour was wrong. And so buying another piece to go with that dress might have been a great idea for somebody else who it did suit, but buying a jacket to go with that dress for me was really just compounding the problem that I hadn't really carefully looked at and realised was the problem with the dress. It wasn't actually that I had nothing to wear with it, it was the fact that it didn't really flatter me, and I didn't like the colour, and I always felt a bit silly in it. I'm sure we've always all got clothes in our wardrobe when we put them on and we look in the mirror and we think, I feel a bit silly in this. What I've realised now is that I don't really like things with frills and ruffles, and really girly stuff doesn't sort of work for me. So whether I put a jacket on the top of it or not, it's still going to be a bit frilly and a bit girly for me. But once you realise what your style is, then you won't put yourself in that position in the first place. So the big challenges that I was coming across was basically the high street shops, trying to find clothing that fitted me and the colour of the clothing in those high street shops. Very difficult to actually make that work. So the solution, of course, was that I realised I needed to make my own clothes so that I could make clothes that fitted me, and I could make them in a colour that I liked, and I could make them in the colours that would go together. Clearly that was the most sustainable option, and that was going to give me a much better cohesive wardrobe. However, I had been a sewer for many years. I mean, not highly productive, but I regularly did a bit of sewing. What I had found, unfortunately, was that the clothing that I was making often didn't fit very well. Because, of course, I was making clothing using patterns, the big four patterns. And the big four patterns are made, again, on that standard size 10, size 12, size 18, whatever. They're made on the standard size body, which isn't my body. Often it would be worse, because I would see a pattern that I thought I liked. I would see some fabric that I thought I liked. I would put them together, I would make the outfit, it would be finished, it wouldn't fit me very well, I'd put it on and I didn't really like the way it looked. and I put all that effort into making that garment. So the problem there was that the patterns were a standard size, and I'm not a standard size. The other thing was that I really at this point didn't understand the shapes, sizes, proportions that flattered my body. I really didn't understand so much where the issues, strong word, where I needed to think a little bit more carefully about what to highlight and what to maybe camouflage a little bit. So I didn't really understand that either. The fabrics, I could find plenty of fabrics in lots of different colours, but I wasn't being very considered about what colours I was buying and how they were working together. So I bring this beautiful me-made thing into my wardrobe, and then it wouldn't go with anything. I didn't really like the shape on me, and yeah, it had problems. Not make problems. My sewing skills were reasonable at this point. So how was I going to solve this problem? Well, I realised that I needed to know more about adapting the patterns and making them fit my body. So I enrolled on a weekend pattern making course. It was run for, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks, and we went along on those weekends one Saturday and learned how to draft patterns and learn how to adapt patterns, and it was really, really valuable and certainly worth the money. It was quite an expensive course, so I deep breath when I paid for it, but the amount of money it has saved me since I've done that course, it's paid for itself many, many times over. So I highly recommend some sort of pattern making course. I mean, I know nowadays you can do them online and all that type of thing, but I would recommend learning a little bit about that. It was very, very useful. So once I'd got that skill behind me, and plus at the end of the course, you took home blocks that were your size for all the basics. So a fitted bodice, a skirt, a stretch top, obviously a dress, trousers, which of course were shorts. There was a whole range of blocks that you came away with and a great deal of knowledge. So that was really useful and really powerful. So now I had the skills to adapt the patterns to my body. But I still was not quite sure on what was going to look good on me and how to design the outfits, if you like. So the next part of it was to try and figure out the designs that worked well on my body. And to do that, I thought, right, I need to do a bit of a sort of fashion drawing, a bit of fashion design, if you like. So I went onto the internet and I looked for all of these fashion figures, these sort of croquis, I think they call them. And I started to draw. I drew up a basic croquis, and then I put it under a sheet of paper and I started to try out different designs. But very quickly I realized that I wasn't really getting anywhere, because I might design something that looked really nice on this sort of 9-foot tall stick figure that isn't even the same shape or size as sort of runway models. I mean, it's quite weird. I mean, they're like alien figures. I mean, they really are extreme. So that might be okay for fashion designers, but it really wasn't helping me work out what proportions and what styles would flatter my figure and would look good on me. So I thought, I need a croquis that's me. I need a croquis, a fashion figure that's my size and my sort of my proportions, really. So I came up with a technique to create croquis that are my shape. They're fashion figures that are me. So one of the videos in this series is going to be how I created those croquis and how I use them to design and work out what clothing that I'm going to make. So once I had the croquis that were me, I could then draw very badly. I'm a really poor drawer, but it doesn't matter. I could still work out the proportions, what would flatter, what would look good, the lines and the styles that were going to work on my body shape. And by doing that, I also learned a great deal about my body. I worked out where the wider bits, the smaller bits, how to balance things, how to sort of accentuate things, how to camouflage parts of me that I didn't particularly like, or well, try to get a really good sense of proportion in my outfits and try to balance things and make them look like a really nice cohesive outfit essentially. The next piece was coming up with a colour palette, a range of colours that I liked, that suited me, that all worked together, and a palette that I could take with me along to fabric stores to buy fabric, to if I was out in charity shops or recycle boutiques buying items that would instantly fall into my wardrobe and work well in my wardrobe. So I'll do another video on how I came up with those that colour palette and how I techniques that I use when I'm out shopping to make sure that the fabrics that I'm bringing home or the items that I'm bringing home, how that I know that when I bring them back they are going to slot right into my wardrobe and they're going to work really well. The other piece of this, of course, was how to find my style. And doing that, I read a whole bunch of books on it. I looked on the internet, watched a load of YouTube videos. I'll pop a few below that I found particularly useful. But I did a whole load of research around that to come up with my style. And one of the key things I did that was really quite useful was to think back over my history of clothes, everything that I had worn through my life. And I don't know about you, but there were a few standout pieces. There were a few pieces that I thought, oh, I loved that dress and I was so sad when it died. And, you know, thinking about why it was so fabulous, why I loved it so much, why I wore it to death. And some of those key learnings, just sort of really recording that and making a note of it and really just doing a bunch of research and thinking and analysis and coming up with some key criteria that I could then use to move forward. So I'll do a video about that as well, about how I came up with my style and some of the rules, principles, concepts maybe that I use when I am designing things, bringing fabrics or clothes into my wardrobe and how I actually bring all that together, if you like. And all of those concepts, all of those principles, all of those techniques I used when I created that capsule wardrobe. The thinking behind it, the items that were included, making something that really worked for me and how they'd all go together. All of these techniques I use all of the time, and now I have discovered all of these things. It really is invaluable, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys, really, because I think for me it's been a game changer and I'm hoping it's going to be the same for you. So follow along with this series. I think the next video in this series is going to be how I created the croquis, the fashion figures that actually are my figure that I can put my style on. And I suppose I should make a caveat here that essentially I'm not doing fashion. I don't follow fashion. I have no idea what this year's Pantone colour is. I don't follow what's in. I don't buy into this idea, this fashion idea, which is that was last year's fashion, that's out, throw those clothes away, buy this year's fashion. I work with style. And style, I think, is timeless. Once you don't throw your body out every year. This body I have, next year, the year after, obviously there are slight changes, slight adjustments, gravity, age, all those sorts of things. But generally, once you figure out what works for your body and what you feel good in, it generally carries on, slowly evolves. But as long as you can figure it out now, you've done yourself a service for years and years to come, and you really start to know the clothes that make you happy. And isn't that the point of it all? What makes you feel powerful and happy? What do you leave the house in feeling great? The clothes that work for you, your lifestyle, that you can do everything that you want to do in and that really work. They are in your service, if you like. So that's what this series is about, and I'm hoping that it will be of use and you will enjoy it. So follow along and I will see you next time. Bye.